Hello, Chevre. How are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy, physically and spiritually. Today is Erev Shvi Shel Pesach. We're holding in Parsha Shmini. And as usual, we have to understand the lessons and the messages for us in serving Hashem. As usual, I'll start with a pasuk from the Rebbe's new kapitel. This week's lesson and thought is really a continuation from last week's. We'll start with the pasuk. Shiramai loy sel Adonai batzarosali karosi vayaneini. It's a song of ascents. I've called out to Hashem in my distress, and He answered me. So, last week we discussed the idea that this is connected to giving thanks and praise and gratitude, and that even though it's b'tzarosa, but since you see the inner intention behind it, you're able to see the positive and you're able to sing and respond with optimism, and that's the key to survival and to triumph. And we mentioned the idea, last week's Parsha had a Korban Todah. It says that when Mashiach will come, that is the only Korban Yachid which will remain. And we said that in Korban Todah we have two aspects. We have one aspect where it's deliverance from danger, which means there's something negative. But then there's a deeper aspect where we're giving thanks because we're able to get more and more intimate with Hashem. Our relationship with Hashem goes higher and higher. And for that we're constantly praising that we're reaching the next level. So in continuation to that, let us address the last days of Pesach. What's the difference between the first days of Pesach and the last days of Pesach? So we have a vort from the Tzemach Tzedek, a famous vort which the Tzemach Tzedek said that letzter Tag Pesach rufen mit dem Namen Achron Shel Pesach. The last day of Pesach is called with the name Achron Shel Pesach. That means that Achron Shel Pesach, the lesser Tag from Pesach, is the siyum von dem, was es sich angeben, the erste Nacht von Pesach. Since it's the last day, that means it's connected with the first day. It's the last, it's the end. It's the end of something that began before. The erste Nacht Pesach is unser Yonte, was HaKadosh Baruch hat uns ausgelesen von Mitzrayim. Die Gula ist schon durch Moshe Rabbeinu, was ist gewähnt der Geil Rishon. Das ist gewähnt der Onhei. The first night of Pesach is our Yonte where Hashem redeemed us, liberated us from Egypt. The first redemption through Moshe Rabbeinu, which he was the first redeemer. That was the beginning. Achron Shel Pesach is unser Yontiv of the Gula Achreinu, was HaKadosh Baruch Hu wird uns auslesen von dem Golus Achrein durch Mashiach Tzidkenu. Achron Shel Pesach, which is the end, is the culmination where the redemption will come through Mashiach. Was Mashiach Tzidkenu is the Goel Achrein. He is the last redeemer. The erste Tag Pesach is Moshe Rabbeinu's Simcha Tag. The first day of Pesach is Moshe Rabbeinu's holiday, happy day. And Achron Shel Pesach is Mashiach's Simcha Tag. And Achron Shel Pesach is Mashiach's happy day. So we see clearly that Achron Shel Pesach, and there are other reasons, is connected to Mashiach. But in truth, let's rewind for a second. And at the night of the Seder, even in the first days of Pesach, we had this paradoxical feeling that during the Agoda, even when we come to the bracha of Gal Yisrael, we say, Lefichach anachnu chayovim lahidus. First we give our duty to thank for Hashem taking us out of Egypt, the first redemption. But then we also mention in the bracha, that we are going to thank you with a new song when Mashiach will come. So during the night of the Seder, on the one hand, we're giving thanks to Hashem for the Gula of Mitzrayim, and that's something which is eternal and irreversible, and we're free men. But at the same time, we recognize that we're in Golus, and we're waiting for the ultimate culmination of redemption, which will come when Mashiach comes. And this we feel even in the first days of Pesach, during the Seder. And then, there's something very, very interesting. For example, just to bring out a contrast of connected to something negative, but at the same time it can be a higher dimension, which is just pure positive, and something which is totally higher. During the Seder, we also open the door by Shvei Chamascha, and it's called the Leil Shimurim. The night of Pesach is called Leil Shimurim, a night of protection. So it's amazing that Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Tov Pei, he mentions that we don't close the doors because it's a Leil Shimurim l'chol b'nei Yisrael l'deireisam l'yitziam migolus hazeh. What does it mean? It's a Leil Shimurim. It's a night of protection. But it means more than that. It's a night that was designated that Hashem should take us out of exile. And we open the door, anticipating Eliyahu Hanavi's coming, and he will find an open door and go towards us quickly. And the Alter Rebbe writes something, we believe in this, so in Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe paskins and says that with this faith alone, because of this faith, there will be great reward. So it's mentioned in Shulchan Aruch, this idea that we open the door in Pesach, and what's on our minds? What are we thinking about? That this was a special night that was preordained, so to speak, from the Eibishter, from the beginning of creation, for Geula. And it's actually a Gemara, and the Gemara is in Rosh Hashanah, Daf, Yud Aleph Amud Beis, where the Gemara says, just in case you're interested, based on the opinion that Rabbi Yeshua says, "B'nissen nigalu, b'nissen nisid nigol." In Nisan we will be redeemed. And the Gemara says, "Menolan." How do we know this? And the Gemara says, "Ameli dekazach, Om makra, leil shimurim, leil hameshumer uba misheishis yimei bereishis." This was a day that the Eibishter, from the beginning of creation, put into the world this idea of liberation, that there will be a day when the Yidden will be redeemed from the last Golus. This is the day connected to the final redemption. B'Nissen nigalu, b'Nissen hasidin ligoil. Tesvav Nissen was the date, which is hasidin ligoil, from get-go, from the creation of the world. So here we see another concept of the contrast. There's two definitions to the word Leil Shimurim. One definition of Leil Shimurim, and the Alter Rebbe also brings it down, is Leil Shimurim min hamazikin. It's a Leil which we are protected from harm, from dangers. So therefore we're not worried. We leave the door open. We're not scared that something's going to happen. So that's a Leil Shimurim min hamazikin. Mazikim is a negative thing. But then we say there's something much, much greater, incomparably higher. We say Leil Shimurim. It's a day which the Eibishter is anticipating, Klal Yisrael is anticipating. This is a day of redemption. This is a day of a revelation of infinity, which we transcend completely all limitations. So we see that even in the first nights of Pesach, we had a Leil Shimurim, which was about the Geula HaMitzvah Shlema, the final redemption. But now let's get back to the last days of Pesach. Here the focus is primarily on the Geula HaSida. So how do we celebrate? What are we meant to be trying to do in the next 2 days? So that to understand that, maybe we could talk about another concept. It's very interesting that there are 15 Shir HaMailos. So we see the number of 15. We also see in the Simonei HaSeder, Kadesh or Chatz, there's 15. Nirtzah is not counted because Nirtzah is something we're saying it should be accepted by Hashem. But when we talk about what we're meant to do, there's 15 Simonei HaSeder, Kadesh, Chatz, Karpas, Yachatz, and all that. And then, guess what? We're talking about being thankful. So there are 15 where the Agoda says, Kama Mailois Toivois Lamokim Aleinu. How many favors did Hashem do for us? And there are 15 of them in the Dayenus. And if you notice, we say Kama Mailois Toivois. It doesn't say Kama Toivois. How many favors did Hashem do for us? We say Kama Mailois Toivois. How many levels of favors? Because we're meant to go ascending from one level to the next, higher and higher. So we see 15 by the Kama Mailois Toivois. We see 15 by the Simoni Seder, and we see 15 Shira Mailis. What's this concept of 15? So it's explained in Chassidus that 15 is Yud K of Shem Havaya. Hashem's name is Yud K Vav K. Yud K is 15. And Chassidus and Kabbalah explains that Yud K represents Moichin. Yud represents the Chachma, the attribute of Chachma, which is a dot, which is a germ, which is a kernel. And then there's Hey, Bina, which represents expansion. So Yud K represents Hashem's intellect, the level of intellect, and Vav K, Vav is 6, the 6 emotions, and Hey goes on Malchus. What's the difference between Moichin, intellect, and Midas, emotions? So we say the difference is, when we talk about serving Hashem, the idea, the concept of intellect represents man as he aspires. Man as he attaches himself to something higher than himself. That's intellect. With your intellect, you can transcend time, you can transcend space, you can think about what you want. With your intellect, you can go out of yourself. Which the truth of intellect, the real concept of intellect is objectivity, which means depersonalizing. Truth. Emotions is how you're affected, how you're feeling. So emotions means the way a person is in a mode of descent, and intellect means the way a person is in a mode of ascent. For example, in general, we say that's like, for example, the difference in the work of a Jew, the way he serves the Eibishter on Shabbos, and the way the Eibishter serves the way a person serves the Eibishter the rest of the week. On Shabbos, he becomes elevated. He goes upward and inward, and he connects to his source, and therefore he's higher than the world. The rest of the week, you're in a mode of descent, and you're engaged with the world. So there's 2 levels in a person. There's the way he impacts and has a connection with others, but then there's a deeper level where he goes inward and higher. So just to make it very clear, there's a beautiful, beautiful mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe, a famous mimer of Kibbutz Yehudim, Tofresh Pei Zayin. And he's talking about really a level of Heder Tvisas Makom, how something is like considered non-existent. And he's talking about that really in spiritual levels. But then he explains what that means in Avodah. And he explains, what does it mean, a person who does not get affected by peer pressure, and he doesn't let others touch him or bring him down or influence him in a bad way. And what's the reason why? Because he's not in their dimension anymore, because the person goes higher and deeper once he discovers truth. And he gives an example. When a person reaches a point where, like for example, he says in the time of Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur or Simchas Torah, where you discover truth and you encounter truth, you get elevated that no other could disturb you. And this that the other can't disturb you is not because you mevatel him, it's not because you look down at him, or because you put him down. It's just as if the other doesn't exist at all. So you're not engaged in wrestling or combating or putting something down as if there's opposition. You don't even sense an opposition. It doesn't exist. And the reason is because he says, Hu ha'iloi shaloi. It's because this person has become so elevated. You became higher and elevated that you're in a space where the other person can't reach you. First, you're in a level where you connected with others, and therefore the other was able to disturb you. But when you reach Ela Emes V'Apnimiyas, but when you come to truth and then you're not connected with others, and therefore the other can't disturb you. And just as if that other person was in a different city, it wouldn't disturb you, so too, when you reach truth, you're like in a different place, and therefore the other one does not disturb you. So this is what it means when we speak about 15. 15 is Avodas HaMeichen. So therefore, in the capital we're saying now this year, Kuf Chav, we say Shir HaMailes, 15 Shir HaMailes. We're ascending. We're going higher and higher and higher, more and more elevated to a place of truth where petty trivialities don't matter anymore. What others think of you, especially if they're not coming from the right place, doesn't matter anymore. You're in a different level. And that's why, by the way, it says also that the Shir HaMailes, Shir, sing, HaMailes, we're rising, we're elevating, we're going from level to level, and it's brought down that this will be sung when Mashiach comes. The kibbutz golius, because, again, the contrast. We jump out of exile, but we jump into redemption, and higher, deeper and deeper, transporting and coming to a deeper understanding and appreciation and consciousness of Hashem. And the same thing is Kama Mailis Teivos. We say Kama Mailis Teivos. When we speak about gratitude, we have to think of it in such a way. First we start with the simple things. Baruch Hashem for this, Baruch Hashem for that. But then we reach higher levels and we appreciate also truth. And reaching things become important to us, values and virtues, and understanding values and virtues and character, and thinking seriously about our relationship with Hashem. So that's all 15. And the same thing when we talk about Yaakov, and he sang these songs while he was in the house of love, and as we spoke last week. What does it mean? How was Yaakov able to overcome Lavan? Because he sang the Shir HaMailes, he went higher and higher into himself and connected to truth and surrounded by truth, that therefore he was very powerful from within and others couldn't bring him down. Anything outside couldn't bring him down. And in a way, this is what it means, Mashiach. And this is what we should be thinking about the last days of Pesach, that our Avodah has to be now focused not so much in changing the world, which we still have to do that, of course, also, but go Shabbosdik. Think how you could become elevated, how you could reach a higher level of spirituality, how you could become more intimate with Hashem, how you could concentrate more during davening, etc., etc. And that's what it means to think geuladik, to think not with an exile mentality, but a redemptive mentality, to go higher and higher, not connected to any limitations in your service of Hashem. Now, to connect it to this parsha, there's a very, very beautiful word that you could say. We're talking about gratitude. So obviously gratitude comes with humility. It's very interesting that the word lachoidos, which means to thank, also is the word moide. Moide ani lefanecha. Moide means we offer thanks, praise, acknowledgement, but it also means to admit. The only way you'll feel gratitude is by first admitting that you're not Superman. The only way you'll feel gratitude is by first admitting you're not God. You're a dependent, you have limitations, you're not perfect, and therefore you realized how much you're indebted to Hashem for all the things that He gives you. So we have this feeling of humility. But at the same time, it's not a contradiction to having supreme self-confidence, because our self-confidence comes from the fact that Hashem is giving us the support. Now, where do we see this balance in a beautiful way? In this week's Parsha, where it speaks about how Moshe tells Aaron to do the Avodah, which would herald the bringing down of the Hashem's Shechina in the Mishkan. He tells Aaron, Kravel HaMizbeach, that he should come close to the Mizbeach. Vayimeh Moshe al Aaron, Kravel HaMizbeach. He tells him, that he should come near to the Mizbeach, which means Aaron had his reservations. Moshe had to tell him, come near. What does Rashi say? Shahoya Aaron Boish. Aaron was embarrassed, he was ashamed. The Yorei Logeshes, and he was afraid to approach the Mizbeach. Why? Because what's Aaron? Aaron is immortal. And Aaron thinks to himself, who am I to serve God? Who am I to have such a great position that I'm going to be serving in the Beis HaMikdash every single day? I'm going to go into the Kodesh Kodashim and Yom Kippurim. Who am I? I'm just a human being of flesh and blood. What arrogance do I have that I could be the one that should be the catalyst that's going to cause Hashem's Shekhinah to come down onto planet Earth? And something which will signify how Hashem is with the entire nation of the Jews. Who am I? Amali Moshe tells him, Lo mata boish, why are you embarrassed? Lekach nivcharta. This is what you were chosen for. This is what you were selected for. So this is on two levels. Number one, you didn't choose this. Hashem chose you. Like we spoke many times. You matter. Not because you decided you matter, because Hashem decided you matter. And if Hashem decided you matter infinitely. So, you're humble. And it's true. And there's things that you think about yourself. You're unworthy. You're insignificant. And you're meant to be humble. But nevertheless, guess what? You were chosen. You were given a mission. You're part of the grand plan. Hashem wants you. Hashem needs you. He wants you to do this for Him. So that itself gives the person the greatest feeling and picks up the person. So that's number one. We see that you're meant to feel and know, Lekach Nivcharta, you were chosen. You are the most important person in the world, in a certain sense, because you have a particular individualistic mission that you have to accomplish. And when you live with that, you'll be able to reach the highest levels of redemption. But then there's even a deeper way we can learn Pshat. Lekach nivcharta. You know why you were chosen? Because you're boish. Because you're ashamed. The person who has humility, that's the one Hashem wants. Me, Yakum Yaakov, that everyone said. There's a pasuk that says, how will Yaakov stand? How will Yaakov survive? Me, Yakum Yaakov, ki kotenhu. Because he is humble, because he's small. So this is also a message we have to take from Pesach. We eat matzah. Matzah is flat. It represents someone that's selfless. There's no ego. But in Chag Pesach, which is the idea of humility, which is egoless, then we come to the Geula. Then we come to the ultimate redemption. L'chaim, l'chaim. Each one of us should be successful in becoming more and more humble. And this will be a greater preparation and making us vehicles for the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. But it doesn't mean that a person becomes unproductive. On the contrary, he's transported and transformed. He reaches transcendence, and therefore he's given the greatest powers. Like Aaron, you were chosen. And because Hashem chooses you, you could come to the greatest heights of spirituality, and we can't even describe it. So the Eibush should help. Mashiach should come now, this year. Take it from Yad Mamish. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.